Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our first ever virtual ACPS post-secondary planning night. My name's Katie Bledsoe. I'm a school counselor at Albemarle High School, and I will be co-hosting tonight with Dr. Poe. So her and I will be moderating this.
And I'll be keeping up with the Q&A. So as you have questions, if you would please drop them in the Q&A to Q&A Poe. I'll monitor that and interject. You may find that some of the things you have in your mind, we're prepared to ask, but don't be shy. Please, if you would, just send those to me, Q&A. The reps will not be monitoring their chats, so chatting to them directly will not be fruitful. I look forward to seeing your questions.
Thanks, Dr. Poe. So we're going to go ahead and introduce everybody. We have 6 amazing college representatives with us this evening. So we're just going to go around and they can introduce themselves and tell us what school they're representing.
Hi, to begin, my name is Kristen Greer, and I'm an assistant dean in the Office of Admission at the University of Virginia.
Hi, everybody. My name is Roger Burke. I'm from James Madison University, and I'm an associate dean in the Office of Admissions at JMU. Go Dukes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kayla St. Clair, and I serve as Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Virginia Tech. Charlottesville has been a part of my territory for 5 years now, so I'm really excited to see you all in this virtual format.
Hey everybody, my name is Kemper Steele. I'm the Director of Advising and Transfer at Piedmont Virginia Community College, otherwise known as the Community College of Virginia. That's unofficial, but I'm going to make that official someday. There you go.
Hi, Min.
Hi everyone, my name is Lauren Bennett and I'm an Assistant Director in the Office of Admission at the University of Richmond. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Hi everyone, I'm representing the fine state of North Carolina and I'm from Appalachian State University. Thanks for joining us.
We did forget at the very top to mention that we do have interpretation services. So if anyone needs that in Spanish, it's in the chat. And if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a globe that says interpretation. Just give you a second if we need to click that. Okay, Ms. Bledsoe, it's on you.
All right, thanks, Dr. Poe. All right, so our first question for this evening. What does a strong applicant or application look like, and what matters most to you in an application? So GPA, test scores, extracurriculars, etc.
So I will be the one going first each time, so I'll get this started. At UVA, we really do value a holistic review. So we look at a balance of factors when we're reviewing your application. But the number one for us is going to be your coursework and your grades in those coursework. Are you taking the top courses available to you, and how are you doing in that coursework? And that tends to be sort of the first factor for us that we review.
And I will second that. I think a lot of us will be in the same boat, but at JMU, we also value the program of studies and how well you've challenged yourself academically with the coursework that was available at your school. And then we also look at the core areas, those five core areas of English, math, lab science, social science, and foreign language. How far into each of those subject areas did you choose to go? And then how well did you do in those core areas? Mostly A's and B's, but those are the primary factors that we're looking at.
And much like my colleagues at here at Virginia Tech, we're looking for the same thing. We're looking at you contextually within your high school. So we're looking to see that you've taken advantage of upper level courses if they're being offered to you, that you're looking to challenge yourself more and more each year. So no senioritis, making sure that you are engaging in a full schedule your senior year and challenging yourself. We're looking at your grades. We are test optional this year. So that is something that is not a mandatory part of our process right now. And then we look at all of your personal qualities, which for Virginia Tech does include your major choice. So we are looking at that when we review an application.
All right, at PVCC, we're a little different in that we are an open enrollment institution. So even though our application process is much shorter than maybe your competitive four-year university, there is an application, but that is more to collect information. You're actually instantly admitted with a student ID number as soon as you apply. I would stress though, a lot of times when people hear that, they would say, oh, great, then if I'm going to PVCC, what I'm doing now doesn't matter. And I would say that is completely untrue. What you're doing now in high school does very much matter, as I would say, regardless of whether you're applying to a competitive university or an open enrollment community college, how you apply yourself in high school will matter with how you get started at the college that you're at next. So I would say it absolutely does matter, regardless of whether we're an open enrollment school or not. But definitely a simpler application process, but just different.
At the University of Richmond, we utilize a holistic review process. So we are looking at your academics. It's a very important part of your application. So the rigor and the grades that you're getting in your high school classes. Typically, we do look at test scores. This year, we are test optional. Right now, that is just for our senior class that's applying to start in the fall of 2021. So if you're a senior right now, that applies to you. You are able to send it if you would like, but it is not a required portion. And then we do spend a lot of time looking at your personal side of your application. So reading those essays, we have a required additional essay, looking at those extracurricular activities and recommendation letters. And I think, at least with us, this year being test optional, those recommendation letters are really going to come into play. So make sure to have some academic recommendation letters, especially if you're planning to go that test optional route. But we really look at the full picture of the student, but obviously academics are very important.
Much like my colleagues, I'm going to echo a lot of the responses, and being last has that perk, I suppose, but we are also an institution that looks at applications holistically here at App State. And just like the others before me, we are also test optional for this year. So I highly recommend taking advantage of the optional materials that we have. We have a list of activities, which is kind of like a less fancier version of a resume, as well as an interest statement, which is exclusive to Appalachian. So those would be my biggest tips, especially if you are planning on not submitting a test score, because it will then enrich your application.
Great. Thank you all for those answers. So our next question, as we all know, this year is unlike any other year that we've been through. So how, if any, has COVID-19 and the pandemic changed how you look at your applicants, especially with things such as extracurriculars and test scores?
So at UVA, and I'm sure everywhere, we're very aware that maybe things were interrupted this year. You're not able to do everything you want to do, and that is just fine. Really, we use the activity section, as someone else mentioned, more like an informal resume, just to see what you're involved with outside of the classroom. The biggest change for us is that we are test optional this year, and there is no penalty for not submitting test scores, and that is the biggest change. Also, I want to head off a very common question is UVA was fortunate. We didn't have any more requests for gap years this year than we do in a typical year. So right now, we don't foresee an impact for the upcoming class in terms of competitiveness. So in some ways, some things have stayed the same, but the biggest change is becoming test optional.
Okay. So at JMU, I think you've hit on the $1 million question. And I don't think if anybody had the foresight to know what this was going to look like and to be able to plan it out, then they'd be sitting in a pretty good spot. But I think the real answer for us is that we're going to have to see. A lot of schools, school systems have chosen different ways of recording the academic achievement from last semester and what they're going to do this fall. I think one thing that's really important for us is to understand from the schools, what does a P actually mean on your transcript? For some schools, you had to actually have a C or better. From others, it might be a D all the way through an A. And when that student had the opportunity to make that call, was it after they saw the grade, or was it right off in the beginning where they had to choose whether they were going to take that class pass, fail, or whether they were going to go for the grade within that course? So that's just going to be a school by school process, which I think most of my colleagues will probably agree with me that as we get into the reading process, this will become clear very, very quickly, and we'll be able to move forward and communicate with the counseling staff to make sure that every student is given every opportunity to be competitive based on the progress that they made in terms of courses and the grades that they've earned. We have been test optional for a number of years, so for students who've been caught up in the whole SAT or ACT issue, it's really not going to be all that much of an issue. And it's going to be a dynamic process. I think we can say that with a great degree of certainty, and that we will work to give every applicant the benefit of the doubt wherever it can be afforded to them. So.
At Virginia Tech, much like we review you within the context of your high school, when we're reviewing in general, it's also with the context of what's going on in the world. So the pandemic is right in the forefront of our minds when we're reviewing applications this year, just like the wildfires out in California, hurricanes that have impacted folks. Like, these are all things that are top of mind when we are holistically reviewing applicants. And so just know that we're taking that into consideration when it comes to looking at your extracurriculars, when it comes to looking at whether or not you submit a test score. At Virginia Tech, we've been pivoting away from test scores for a few years now. They really have not been a huge determining factor in our decision making. So this is not a huge change for us, honestly. It's really just putting you in the driver's seat to decide whether or not you want them to be looked at by the admissions committee. And so this year we are optional. We'll see if it sticks around after this. And we do encourage you to find, some different ways to maybe get engaged than your normal extracurriculars if they aren't happening. And then we also, on the Common App and Coalition applications, which Virginia Tech accepts both, there are COVID-19 statements that you can fill out in COVID-19 questions. So if COVID-19 has impacted you or your family or your living situation greatly, we do encourage you to share that. And that is something that we will consider in the admissions review process. And that helps provide context as well when we're reviewing your grades, test scores, anything like that.
So COVID obviously has impacted all of us in many different ways. But this is actually one topic that has not impacted Pvcc, given the fact that we are a non-competitive admission program. Things like extracurriculars and test scores, those did not impact admissions pre-COVID, so they don't impact admissions post-COVID. I will add, though, test scores at Pvcc, like SAT, ACT, things like that, can help you with placement into certain courses, not for admissions, you're admitted in, but can help you with placement into certain courses. But one new thing that has happened at PVC is we no longer have the placement test. So that is actually something that I'll be talking about in my breakout sessions later that will actually impact. So test scores can help, but there's actually other ways that you can place in courses anyway, regardless of whether you have test scores. You could enter with 0 test scores and we're able to place you into certain courses, not even having to deal with placement tests. So that, I would say, would be one thing that has been impacted, but not on the admission side.
So to kind of echo what's already been said, at the University of Richmond, we are test optional this year, which is probably our biggest change. in terms of admission. And like Kayla mentioned, with the COVID question that is both in the Common App and Coalition, which are the two applications that we accept, we will be looking at that for any additional context you want to provide. Don't feel that you have to fill that out. Share whatever you feel comfortable with. But it's just a way to kind of provide some additional context. I mentioned that we do look at extracurriculars. Now, say you are typically the captain of the baseball team, or you usually do a particular extracurricular that happens in the spring. If we don't see that on your application, we're going to kind of understand why. So we are going into this with the lens of COVID and all that happened. So don't feel that you're going to be negatively impacted. This was out of everyone's control. So we are taking that into consideration when reviewing applications, but just the biggest change for us is definitely being test optional.
Agreeing again with most of my colleagues, these ladies before me raised some excellent points. I was also going to mention the Common App section. We are on Common App here at App State, so there is that little box where you can be as transparent as you like about your predicament and how COVID has potentially impacted you. But, you know, as we consider all of the impacts that COVID has had upon us in admissions, I think one of the best things that has come out of this is college access and students being able to apply to schools maybe that they wouldn't ordinarily done before, especially now that test scores are not usually a part of the equation for many of us. So I would say go for some schools, you know, that you may not have applied at before, because now that that's not a part of what we are looking at in many circumstances, it could really weigh in your favor.
Great, thank you.
Can I
And just,
interject for just a second, Katie?
yes.
So in the chat, we've had a couple questions that are related to it. And one of them is, and forgive me, because I'm listening to you and I'm typing at the same, and typing to folks at the same time. It sounds like you're focusing on the students who are applying for this year, but someone asked, is the same thing going to be true as you're evaluating students for next year? Juniors at this time would normally be getting very involved. They would be building a resume, and then next year they would be applying. How are you preparing to receive those students who will be applying as seniors next year?
I can take that. I mean, we understand that this is going to be an interruption in many ways on many students' transcripts and activities for the next couple years. And we do fully understand that. I will say in regard to test optional, UVA, this is a pilot year, and so we don't have an answer yet. We hope to know in the spring sort of whether or not this will be permanent or not. But in terms of juniors now, you know, just do the best you can, focus on, you know, your family and staying healthy. And that's really what we want at the end of the day. It's not about getting a magic number of extracurricular activities, because there isn't one. We just want to see, you know, see what you're involved with, however you're involved with it. But the main priority at the end of the day is you and your health and being well.
Absolutely, thank you. And if anyone else wants to chime in, but it sounds, I saw a lot of head nods, so collectively similar answers. Great.
And then
All right.
one more that's related. I'm sorry, we have a very active 328 people. We appreciate you all. There was a question that said, what's the motivation to take the SAT if it's test optional? And then a related question from someone else was, is the SAT going to be used for scholarship purposes? Is that perhaps the motivation? And then I'll go on.
So I think that is a little bit institution specific. At Richmond, we are completely test optional. So for both merit aid and just admission in general, you do not need to take a standardized test. Right now, our policy is that if you are to be admitted and enrolled, you will need to submit an official test score. And that's for ranking purposes, but who knows if that might change. I would say the motivation would be if you are a great test taker and you want to show that additional context to your application, that's a great way to do that. So maybe junior year going virtual, your grades dipped a little bit, and then you want to take the test and show that, you know, it was just this virtual setting. I know I can do the work. Let me submit this test. So it's just a way to add additional context to your application. But as Megan mentioned, I was a horrible test taker, so this is a great opportunity for people that might not be a great test taker. So you can always take it and not send it to the school, and then decide if you want to send it in and be test considering or test optional.
I want to add on something to that, Lauren. I think another great way to have motivation in taking that test is it's good experience, especially if you want to go into a field that does require tests like law school or medical school or nursing school. I think it's really great experience to, sit down and have that time constraint and those difficult questions that are presented to you. And especially if you're interested in going into graduate school as well. A lot of graduate schools have GRE and MAT requirements as well. So I feel like it will be a good experience for you to take it if possible.
And I'll just add on there, it can provide that great experience, but as of right now, I do not want anyone going through extra lengths to take the test. Another one of my territories is Colorado, and their counseling staffs are sharing with me that they have folks calling from California, Oregon, Washington State, trying to take tests at their schools because of feeling that pressure of needing to have a standardized test to apply for college. And I promise you, if we're telling you that we're test optional, we are test optional. So do not think that, you're going to be missing out by not providing those scores in the process. I really don't want anyone to be going out of their way or, doing something that doesn't make them feel safe or healthy in order to get these tests taken. Because when we say we're optional, we really do mean it.
Great, thank you all for sharing. So our next question is going to be with regard to the actual application. So what do you look for in an admissions essay? And what is your best piece of advice for students in regards to their admissions essays?
Okay. The essays are my favorite part of the application. At UVA, we don't have interviews, and so the essays are one spot where we really get to see your personality. And so we get to hear your voice, and we get to learn about what you're passionate about and what your interests are. And so my best advice to you is use spell check. Don't over thesaurus it, because we'll know, and have someone else read over it, but never have someone rewrite it for you.
Okay. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about, but I'll keep it very, very brief. I think that one thing that as a prospective student, you need to know, this is one of the pieces that you have absolute complete control over. You can dictate what you want to put into that essay. So I think the first thing is to answer the question. If the question is in 200 to 300 words, tell us how your life is like a radish. Don't spend 150 of those rephrasing the question because you only got 50 words that you really want to tell about how your life is like a radish. Just answer the question. We read, every application has an essay with it, has a letter of recommendation. So when we're reading applications, we're reading them over and over and over again. So I want to just say, get to the point, but get to the point. The other thing is it's really important to me is that you let your voice come through. We've heard that it's okay to have somebody read it. It's okay for somebody to give you some feedback and spell check, but it really should be your voice coming through in that essay. It's really important that you take control and you have ownership of that. At JMU, we don't have a particular prompt. It's a personal statement. It's wide open. It gives you an opportunity to add value to your application. And so, for instance, if you're a straight A math student, you've taken every math class that's offered, don't spend your time talking about your math abilities. We can see that on the transcript. It's very clear. But if, on the other hand, if you're an AB student and you got a D in Spanish 2, and then you took Spanish 3 and got a B, I'm thinking, what happened here? And that's a great place for you to use at JMU, the personal statement, to help us understand and put in context what was going on in your life during that period of time that you had that little hiccup in. So with that, I'm going to stop right there because I know my colleagues have plenty of other things to add, and I don't want to.
So I love Roger's response because it's very much my favorite thing about, reading essays at Virginia Tech. We have 4 personal statements. They are very short and sweet. They are 120 words each. So if y'all can tweet, I promise you can answer our personal statements, and they are meant to be short, sweet, answer the question, what adds value? What are things that we can't capture by looking at who you are inside the classroom? Obviously your academics are very important in this process, but we're not admitting a student to Virginia Tech. We're admitting a person to Virginia Tech. So what do you need to do to show us who you are as a person and not just as a student? You should be looking to use your authentic voice, not trying to write what we want to hear. I promise you, there's nothing I want more than to hear your voice. So please make sure that you write about whatever is salient to you, whatever feels most real, whatever you want to share with us. That really does shine through in this process. And that's what I encourage every applicant to do.
Nice. Kayla, I want to piggyback on Kayla. Kayla said that their essays are short and sweet. Ours are even shorter and sweeter. All right. They're called 0 words. All right. So so we have 0 essays required. So I'm sorry, Kayla, to beat you on that one, but that was well put. All of y'all said great things. I don't have anything to add except for a tip, because and part of my job is to serve as the chief transfer officer at the college. So we work a lot with students who go from our school to these amazing universities, and there are essays involved in that as well too. The thing I will just strongly push for you guys, whether you're applying as a freshman or a transfer, is it's just as, and Kristen hit on this at the beginning as well, and it kept going, is it's just as important how you write it as it is what you're writing about. So I can tell you guys, I've had people share with me here at Pvcc some pretty powerful stories and personal things about them. And I will tell you all, how they shared it with me is not how I would want them to put it in words, because it was almost like they were so emotionally in it, they didn't know how to actually write it. And so you have to think about how you're going to write it just as much, because that story could get lost if you write it like a text message. You know what I mean? That story could get lost if you write it like a tweet. You know what I mean? And that sort of thing. So you need to think about how you write it just as much about what you write. But I think that, yeah, all these people are experts at this, and they really do want to read what you write. They really do. All right, so cool.
Okay, to kind of echo what has already been said, yes, the essay I think is a lot of people's favorite part of the application, because it's the time that we actually get to know you as a person. We know that you are more than your GPA or your test score. You're a human being, and we want to know what makes you tick, what are you passionate about, what's an experience that you've overcome. It's really your chance to have a conversation with us. A piece of advice that I have for students as you're sitting down to write your personal essay for the Common App or Coalition App is make a list of things that you hope we as admission counselors take away after reading your entire application. So do you want us to know that you are very passionate about the arts, you are a loyal friend, you are hardworking, whatever it might be, and then think about where in your application you've highlighted those different things. And if there are parts that you don't know will be touched on in your recommendation letter and your extracurriculars, then those are great things to include and try to incorporate in your essay if you're just sitting there thinking, how do I even get started on this essay? And like Kemper said, it's not so much about what you're writing about. While yes, we want you to stick to the topic, one of my least favorite essays is hearing about how students have failed the driver's license test, but they've overcome that challenge, which is scary to know that many people on the road have failed their driver's license test. But I've also read essays that are so well written about that topic. So when I start to read, I'm like, oh no, it's another one of these. But then sometimes I'll leave the essay thinking, wow, the student did an amazing job. So really think about how you're going to relay the information to us and show us your personality, because it's not so much the topic as it is just letting us know your authentic self and having that conversation with us, because we're people too reading your applications.
Really difficult to go last on this one because I agree with every single tip that was mentioned. I am really big on feeling what you're passionate about through your writing, just like everyone else. And just to add one additional tip, just remember that if you're applying through a super application like Common App, I'm not sure how many of us are on Common App, but just keep in mind that that same essay goes to every school that you apply to, just to throw in that additional tip. So a ton of different reps are going to be reading your application. So just make sure your essay is a reflection of you and something that you're proud of.
Great, thank you all. So our next question that we have, in Albemarle County, we offer several courses at the AP advanced placement level and dual enrollment level. So how do you guys view AP versus dual enrollment? And does your school have a preference of one over the other?
So, you know, AP versus dual enrollment, I get this question a lot, and really it depends on a lot of factors. AP US History and History 121 and History 122 at the community college, they're the same. They're the same class. But if you're deciding between, let's say, dual enrollment, Math 154, quantitative reasoning, and AP Calculus, that's where you get the difference. So the content does matter with it, but really we understand it comes down to a personal preference. I happen to know Pvcc very well. With that coursework, we understand that it's rigorous, and you know, those courses will come over, and for some students, that's a better option for them than taking a test to meet that criteria. That's sort of the trade-off for it. So it's mostly a personal preference, but again, it depends on the content a little bit too. So I say whatever works best for you for those areas.
So with JMU, we would value them or view them to be fairly similar, as a higher level, more rigorous curriculum than you might have in an honors or a college prep course of the same title. So it's your choice, whichever works best for you, whatever fits in your schedule best. And then depending upon what your score is on the AP exam, you may or may not receive college credit. If you get a C or a B in the dual enrollment course, you may or may not get college credit for it. But the one thing that I would just throw in here is, just as a cautionary tale, I guess, is if you're interested in a particular subject area and you're able to take an AP or dual enrollment course during the high school and fulfill a general education requirement that's not in your intended major, I think that's really beneficial. If, however, you're going to be a biology major and you take, you know, AP biology and you're able to get out of one of the semesters of biology as an incoming freshman, I would just ask you to be cautious about that because a lot of the upper level courses are built on the courses that precede them. So that freshman level course in your subject area is going to really be the foundation that everything will be built upon. So while we would view it in the admissions process as being similar and being rigorous, a lot of students I've heard, and maybe more from the parents, that they're taking dual enrollment so they can get out of high school and only have to be in college for 3 years. And I think that's a double-edged sword. I think that can be a very sticky position to take rather than challenging yourself and preparing yourself to do well once you get to a college campus.
I echo what Kristen and Roger have both shared. At Virginia Tech, we have no preference between the two, and so we see them really the same level of rigor. The main difference is going to be how you earn that credit, like Kristen mentioned. So it can be if you do dual enrollment and you're earning a C or better, it's very likely it's going to transfer into Virginia Tech. Vast majority of the Virginia Community College courses do. Whereas if you're, you know, taking an AP class, you're going to have to earn typically a 4 or a 5 on those tests for a full year of credit. In some courses, you may receive a semester for a 3 on the test. So it really depends on kind of if you want that guaranteed credit or if you want to do the AP testing to see what credit you receive there. Your academic advisor at Virginia Tech is who would meet with you over that credit, kind of like what Roger was mentioning, to kind of say, okay, yeah, you do have, you know, a 5 on your AP Calc AB exam, but, you know, you may want a refresher course because you took that your junior year or something like that. Like there's opportunities for that academic advisor to work with you based on the major you've chosen to accept or deny any transfer credit that will come in. And so they can be kind of that content expert for you and help you decide what to do at that point.
Yeah, well put. This is a topic that we talk about a lot at PVCC. And actually less students ask us all the time about this when they come in, less about how it impacts us and more about how it impacts them once they leave us. So, I will start by saying the confusing thing sometimes is, here, I will tell you some really good news. Some really good news is that Kayla just mentioned, she's exactly right. A lot of these great schools here on this call are going to be looking for 4s or better. We'll actually accept a lot of 3s for credit at our school. However, we have to have a conversation a lot that just because we accept the 3 doesn't mean the next stop accepts the 3. In fact, the answer is no, the next stop doesn't accept the 3. So we're having a lot of conversations about, like, great, you got 6 credits of this with us, but guess what? At blah, blah, blah university, you're going to get 0 credits because it was only a 3. So that's number one, is just being aware of how different schools, you'll hear us say this a lot. Kristen knows this because Kristen used to work at Pvcc and I had the joy of working with her, but different rules for different schools. We said it all the time at Pvcc. We say it all the time. So that's number one. Number two is, and I'm going to actually go into a lot more detail about this in my breakout sessions later. So you're welcome to join me, shameless plug. We have guaranteed admission agreements with a lot of these great schools on this call and many others. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize, and I'm not saying this to say one over the other, but a lot of people don't realize that there is a minimum number of credits you must earn at the Virginia Community College to get guaranteed admission to a lot of these schools, and AP credits sometimes doesn't count towards that minimum number of credits. So meaning you could bring in a lot of AP credit, but you still have to get a minimum number of community college credits to be eligible for guaranteed admission. Dual enrollment does count though. And so, and there's some rules regarding dual enrollment in some of these schools, but, and we don't have to get into the nuances of that now, but just know that dual enrollment credit can count towards that while AP may not. As well. And then finally, this kind of echoes on, I think Roger was hitting on this and all of you all were, is, I hate to put it this way, but I'm just going to put it bluntly, is you could do B work in your dual enrollment class and get credit towards your Pvcc, towards your 4-year university. You could do B effort in an AP class and not do well enough to get credit at that 4-year. And I hate to say, I'm not at all saying go out there and do B effort. You know what I mean? I'm not at all saying that, but I'm just saying a B in a dual enrollment class could get you college credit. Doing B effort on the AP test could end up not getting you the college credit you want, even if you did A effort in the class. So it's just something to be in mind that so much rides on that test score, but overall, we're accepting both credits and we're helping you figure that out here at Pvcc of how the next school will accept it.
So I think my colleagues have brought up a lot of great points. So to echo some of that, yeah, at the University of Richmond, they are both AP and dual enrollment are considered rigorous courses. So when we are going through the academic side and looking at your transcripts, they will count towards those advanced courses. Now, Richmond is a little bit picky when it comes to dual enrollment classes. So in order to award credit, they do need to be taken at a community college campus or taught by a community college faculty member. So if this is being taught at your high school by a high school teacher, but you're just paying through a community college, unfortunately, we would not provide credit for that. But with your AP classes, we would look at for a 4 or 5 on those tests. So I think as Kemper was saying, it really is school specific. So if you're interested in looking at what classes to take your senior or junior year, and you really know what school you want to go to, maybe taking a look at their registrar page is typically where it's listed, just to kind of see what their rules are. But that's how it is at Richmond.
So very similar things to echo amongst my colleagues as well, but Appalachians is a little bit different. It honestly just depends on what's available to the student. And in many cases, a lot of our applicants might not have a community college nearby. And so therefore, the only credit that they're able to get at the college level is through AP courses. So I would say for us, we look less at the comparison in rigor between community college dual enrollment courses versus AP, and we're going to award credit either way. So The good news with Appalachian is we do accept 3s and above on AP scores. So that is an access point for us as well. And, you know, at the end of the day, whatever is most conducive for the student is definitely what I suggest in the long run.
Great, thanks everybody. All right, so our next question has to do with some deadlines. So does your school offer early action or early decision? If so, what's the difference, and are there advantages to applying early?
So UVA offers both early action and early decision. Early decision is binding, meaning if you're admitted, you commit to attending. Early action is non-binding. I always tell students a good way to choose is early decision if UVA is your #1 school, and early action if it's one of your #1 schools. It's a good differentiation. For both of those this year, the deadline's November 1st. So seniors, you have a month to decide. But really, in terms of how we review applicants, it's the exact same. Last year, we only got about 2,000 students who applied early decision, and it happened to be a really stellar applicant pool. But last year was our first year with early decision. So we'll see what happens this year, but we have committed to not bring in more than 1/3 of our class with early decision. So really it's the same review each round. It's more of a personal decision for you as to when you want to apply. An important note about that though is for early action, early decision, we probably will only be able to maybe see your first quarter grades. Otherwise, we're primarily considering your grades from 9th through 11th. So we also have a third option called regular decision, and that deadline's January 1st. And that's really great for students who need that fall semester of their senior year to show us progress over time or improvement over time to show us more grades, essentially. So yes, 3 rounds, the first of which early decision or early action on November 1st.
Okay, at JMU, we have early action, which is non-binding. We do not offer an early decision option. And we also have a regular decision option as well. The deadlines for our early action is November 15th. We've pushed them back 2 weeks, both for early action and for regular decision. So early action is November 15th and regular decision is now February 1st. And I would say the biggest advantage of applying in the early action process is that we do have one scholarship, the Dingle-Dean Bluestone Scholarship, that you have to apply early action for. So it's a kind of a separate application for that scholarship, but you have to do the early action application. So you have to commit on the early, and again, it's non-committal if you are admitted. So, Kayla.
Yeah, so Virginia Tech offers early decision, early action, and regular decision. Early decision is the one that's binding. So when you apply that way, you are committing to attend Virginia Tech. We stick to 20% of our freshman class coming in early decision just to make things equitable for the other decision plans as well. So we do limit that to 20% of our freshman class being early decision. The big thing to know about early decision and remember about early decision at Virginia Tech, other than the fact that it's binding, is the fact that your financial aid and scholarships package, while you're fully eligible for everything related to financial aid and scholarships, you typically won't have it in hand before you need to submit your deposit. So if that's something you need to see before saying yes, which is very understandable if it is, we recommend early action instead. We want you to have all the financial aid information and scholarships information that you need to make a decision. So please make sure that if that's a consideration in your decision, that you are considering early action over early decision. With early action at Virginia Tech, it is how we select most of our students. So the vast majority of students apply early action. So we do award most of our spaces during that time frame. So if you want to be as competitive as possible, we recommend doing early action and not waiting for regular decision. Regular decision is looked at more on a space available basis, depending on the major that you've chosen. So just make sure if you want to be as competitive as possible for your major, you're choosing early action. Early decision applications are due November 1st. Early action are due December 1st, and then regular decision is January 15th.
Nice. So no early action, no early decision, no competitive admission applications, so I'm good. And our application is open year round, no closing or opening of it, it's open year round. So feel free to apply as early as you'd like. So cool, moving on to Lauren,
Thank you. So we are very similar, as Kayla was mentioning. We have early decision, early action, and regular decision. And our regular decision, while it's not necessarily space available, it's pretty competitive just because we do have so many different application plans. So I highly advise you to apply either early decision or early action. So at Richmond, early decision, that's that binding process. We have early decision 1, which is November 1st, which is crazy that it's so soon. And then we also have early decision 2. So maybe you want to wait a little bit, kind of figure out, is Richmond your #1 school, or have some of those grades from your first semester. So we have early decision 2, which is a January 1st deadline. We also have early action, which is the non-binding, non-restrictive option, and that's November 1st. And then regular decision, which is January 1st. So we get quite a bit from our early decision since we have early decision 1 and 2. So about 40% of our class comes from early decision. So I'd recommend, if you're not planning to apply early decision, definitely apply early action just to be as competitive as possible.
All right, so I'm kind of in the middle of a lot of you. We have an early action decision period, which is non-binding, similar to Roger over at JMU, and that is going to be an application that is due around November 1st. We do have a 2-week wiggle room period for any additional materials that could come our way up through November 15th. So, you know, any test scores that you may want to submit or transcripts and things like that, we do have that little period, that grace period for you. So I do highly recommend to apply in the early action period. Again, it's non-binding, so you're not committed by contract or anything to come to app if you are accepted, but very similar to my colleagues, it does become more competitive after this initial deadline to get accepted. And the big reason why I always stress that secondarily as well is for our scholarships, which I know we're going to talk about in a little while. You do have to apply early action to be eligible for all of our university sponsored scholarships because of their process. So highly recommend to apply early. We do have a secondary decision time frame, I should say, and that is the regular decision time frame, and you can apply by February 1st to be considered in that pool.
Wonderful, thank you. So our next question is, are there different?
I'm sorry, can I come in one more time? So we had a question that's kind of related to what you just touched on. If you said it, forgive me, I'm listening and writing. Someone asked, how soon will you know after you've done early decision or early action whether or not you've been admitted? That was one question. And then the second one that was related is, if you apply early admission or early decision, can you also apply regular decision if you don't get in?
I think this might be institutional based. So do we want to go around? Maybe I can start, unless we want to do the normal. We can kind of do the Uno reverse card or something. Okay, for me at Appalachian, students, once they are reviewed one time, they are no longer eligible for re-reviewal for a semester at least. So for us, if you apply early and you receive a decision in typically we say by January 25th, at times we release decisions earlier than that, but it does vary by year. So if you apply by November 1st, you will receive a decision by January 25th. And if you apply in the regular decision timeframe, that application is due February 1st, and you'll receive a decision by March 15th. And like I mentioned, if you are reviewed in the first bunch, then you will receive one decision that is good for that entire academic year.
So at Richmond, you can change your application plan if decisions have not been released. So say you apply early action and then you decide, actually I want to be considered for regular or early decision 2, you can change as long as your decision has not been released. But once you have a decision, that is your decision for the year. And then if you wanted to go to a community college or go to another school to apply to transfer, or you could take a year and then reapply, but you cannot change once the decision is sent out. Okay, so for our decision deadlines, again, this is institutional specific, so checking out websites is definitely helpful. For early decision 1, which is that November 1st deadline, you will find out by December 15th. For early action, that is our non-binding, that is a November 1st deadline, and you will find out by January 25th. For early decision 2, which is that January 1st deadline, you will find out by February 15th. And for regular decision, which is that January 1 deadline, you will find out by April 1st.
Okay, Kayla, they're all yours. Go.
Thank you, Kemper. So at Virginia Tech, when you apply early decision, you will find out a decision by mid-December with your deposit being due mid-January. For early action, you'll find out your decision at the end of February with the deposit being due by May 1st. And then for regular decision, you'll find out something that first week of March with once again, the deposit being due May 1st. So those are when you can kind of expect to hear something. With early decision, we can defer you. So the 3 decisions that can happen there are an offer, a defer, or a deny. And if we defer you, we roll you over to early action and look at your application again. But no one rolls over from early action to regular decision. So early action and regular decision, you would in both of those scenarios receive a decision of an offer, a wait list, or a deny. And so that's kind of the final stop there. And then we're happy to talk about the transfer route, whether it be from another 4-year institution or a 2-year institution. Fun fact, I am a product of Virginia Western Community College and transferred to Virginia Tech. So there are plenty of students who do that. About 20% of each graduating class at Virginia Tech started out as a transfer student. So there's no shame in it. And you should really explore that option if that's what feels right to you or if that's what's best for you.
Okay, for JMU, the early action deadline of November 15th, we notify by mid-January. And then for the regular decision of February 1, we'll notify in the middle of March or as soon as we get the decisions completed and the process done and proofed and ready to go out, because we want to make sure that the correct decision goes out to each applicant. If you do apply for the early action process, again, there are 3 options. One is to be admitted. One is to be deferred to regular decision, and there's no need to reapply. We just roll over your application and consider it with the regular decision applicant pool. And then the other would be you might be denied admission in the early process, and students who are denied early would not have been competitive in the regular decision process. So if they were going to be competitive, we would have rolled them over and considered them with the regular decision pool.
Great. And lastly, at UVA, we're very similar in that you get 3 decisions. Options, you're either admitted, denied, or deferred. And that is true for early decision and early action. If you're deferred, that means we review you again in regular decision and can see some updated grades. I always say being deferred is a compliment. We just want to see more. Typically, that means your senior year grades. For early decision, you apply November 1st. You'll hear back mid-December. For early action, you apply November 1st, you hear back mid-February, and then regular decision, which has the deadline of January 1st, you would hear back on by April 1st. An important note for all 3 of those, we actually have the same financial aid deadline, and that is March 1st. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
Great, thank you. So we only have about 4 minutes left, but we want to just end with one very important question. So do you offer school-specific scholarships? And if so, how does a student apply to those?
Well, UVA meets 100% of need-based financial aid. So our focus is really on meeting 100% of need. The one significant scholarship is the Jefferson Scholarship. Your school has to nominate you, and there's a regional selection process, and it results in about 60 students a year receiving a full ride for all 4 years. So if you're interested in the Jefferson Scholarship, talk to your guidance counselor and they can get you started on the process.
For JMU, the scholarship opportunities are there. Our largest award, the Dingledine Scholarship, is a full tuition, in-state tuition award. Again, you need to apply early action to be considered for that. We do have kind of a neat little fun Powtoons kind of videos. They're about 4 minutes each that go over need-based aid, merit-based aid, that whole application process, and that's available on our financial aid webpage. And so we do have scholarships, and everything is coordinated through what we call the Madison Scholarship Hub. So once you get to the financial page, the entire list of scholarships is there with hyperlinks that you can click to and take advantage of those if you're qualified.
At Virginia Tech, we try and make things as simple as possible. We put everything really in a one-stop shop for you. So we have our general scholarship application, which is where all of our need and merit-based scholarships are located. And so need-based means that there's a financial need component to that scholarship, and then merit-based would be it's based on your academics. Virginia Tech, we do our best to, award, as much scholarship dollars as we can each year. About 60% of our students will receive something from Virginia Tech. So that is a, good portion of the students. And the biggest thing you can do is get everything in on time. That is what really maximizes your financial aid package and scholarship packages. So I cannot stress that enough. For maximum consideration, you do need to get things in on time. For the general scholarship application and the FAFSA at Virginia Tech, so the free application for federal student aid, both of those for us, you should get those in by January 22nd. So once again, students who wait for a regular decision, January 15th, you've only got about a week to navigate all of that and get all of that in. So that's why we also stress early action as much as possible. If you're looking into honors college scholarships, those are also hosted within the general scholarship application, but they are due December 15th. So that's kind of the one thing that's set aside. And all of our scholarships at Virginia Tech are also pivoting with our test optional model. And so no scholarships will be dependent on test scores this year.
Awesome. So we also have scholarships at Pvcc through our institutional advancement office. What's nice about them is, number one, high school seniors can apply for them directly. A lot of times people think that you have to get to Pvcc first, then you can tap into scholarships, but you can be a high school senior and apply to get scholarships even in your first year at Pvcc. It does require to fill out the FAFSA, but it does not require you to have a specific EFC, which for those of y'all who don't know what that is, that's the fun magic number at the end of your FAFSA that is computed. So it doesn't require something specific there. But another nice thing about our scholarships, so that, oh, by the way, that opens up usually around November 1 and closes around March 1. And what's nice about it also is we have a bunch of Pvcc scholarships that are only for Pvcc students. So you're not competing against a huge pool, and it's only one app. So you fill out this one simple application and they sort of figure out where it connects to and that sort of thing as well. One last thing I'll add is this year we actually introduced a new initiative through our institutional advancement office called Pvcc for You, which actually was a way that we were able to meet full need with grant money all the way up 100% to anybody that was a full-time student that was program placed. So that's something that was actually started this year. I have no idea what the future of that will be every year, so don't hold me to that, but you can see that the amount of aid that is becoming available to students is growing, and that's a good sign as well. So definitely scholarships, and seniors, look out for that opening up around November 1.
Okay, so at Richmond, there's no additional application that you need to fill out to be considered for our merit-based scholarships. All you need to do is apply by December 1st. So if you take my advice and apply early action, you will already be in the running for our merit-based scholarships. We have 2 merit-based scholarships that we award. We have our Richmond Scholars, which is about 25 students in each incoming class and is a full tuition, room and board scholarship to Richmond. We also have our Presidential Scholars, which is about 75 in each incoming class, and that's a third of tuition. So again, there's no additional box you have to check or essay, anything like that. Just apply by December 1st. Something I do want to note is that Richmond is less than 1% of institutions in the nation that is both 100% need blind in the admission process and meets 100% of demonstrated need for our students. So please do not hesitate to apply for financial aid. It will not hurt you in our application process. I don't even see if you've applied for financial aid. And something else I want to highlight that's really unique to Virginia residents is our Richmond's Promise to Virginia. So if you are a resident of the Commonwealth of Virginia and your household income is $60,000 or less, you are eligible for a full financial aid, full ride to Richmond. So it's tuition, room and board of full financial aid, no loans, nothing you need to pay back. So again, that's if your family makes under $60,000. So I'm gonna throw my email in the chat box. If you have any questions about your eligibility for that, please feel free to reach out. I get calls every year, parents like, this is too good to be true. So please know that it's not. We really want to make Richmond as affordable for our Virginia residents as possible. And just something to note, I know we've all thrown like a ton of deadlines at you and you probably feel very overwhelmed. These are all on our website, all laid out. So don't feel like you need to be jotting these all down. Just take a look at the schools you're interested in. And again, it's all on our website.
Sorry, had trouble with my mute button. So I'll close it out. We have a really seamless scholarship application that will be available in your student portal. So all you have to do is complete your Common App application, submit that, and you will get what we call the My Mountaineer portal. A scholarship application button will be embedded within that portal, and the scholarship committees make it really easy for you. There are 3 essays. You complete those essays, and they then send off your essays to the committees that you and scholarships overall that you are eligible for. So they then take that information, and there's an interview process as well for us here. And overall, all of our scholarship information can be found on the website with all of the dollar amounts awarded as well as the specific scholarships that we offer.
All right, well, we have reached our time for the evening for the panel. So on behalf of ACPS, I would like to give a huge thank you to our college representatives who joined us tonight. Thank you so much. You guys have a wealth of information, and thank you for sharing. And thank you to students and family who joined us this evening. This will conclude the panel in this Zoom link. So for the other sessions that we have following this, they have their own Zoom links. So thank you again. And the colleges have put their contact info in the chat, and on their admissions website, you can find a wealth of information there as well. So again, thank you, and everyone have a wonderful evening.